Now, here in the UK, a committee of MPs says school children should be taught the joy, that is how they have put it, of mending clothes. The idea is part of a push to control fast fashion and to stop people buying so much stuff and then throwing it away.
They're trying to tap him to marry Tom, though.
It says clothing producers and retailers should charge a penny on every garment they sell to fund a £35 million or $40 million annual recycling scheme. Mary Cray, who chairs this particular parliamentary committee, says urgent action is needed.
I think part of the problem...
We throw away over 1 million tonnes of clothing here in the UK, and 300,000 of those tonnes of clothing go to landfill or incineration. So what we're saying is that fashion needs to take responsibility for the clothes that it puts on the market.
I think it's
the government to introduce an extended producer responsibility scheme
and I guess
to invest in
the
recycling
past, if you'd had to hand knit all your
in every city
and it had taken
in the UK.
Well, Lauren Cowdery is a director of a clothes
days
swap
and days
shop
and
in
days
the north
to do
it.
And you got a hole in them, you darn them. Whereas now when you can buy a multi-pack of socks for £3 off Amazon and they'll turn up in 24 hours. Actually,
how was that challenge?
Yeah.
It was difficult to start with. I think it's all about changing your mindset. I think to start with you kind of think, oh, I'm depriving myself of something. But after a while you realise that you can get the value out of the clothes you already own, and there are fantastic options for swapping or acquiring second-hand clothing.
And prior to that year kicking in, how keen a clothes buyer were you?
I was quite keen. I think it's. I think you sort of think, oh, I'll treat myself, or it's a special occasion, or I'm going out, I'll get something new. And I think it's all, like I say, it's all about changing that mindset. Whereas now I wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I need a new outfit to go out in. I'd think, what have I got already, or where can I get something second hand?
So take us into your swap shop. What actually happens?
So we at Leeds Community Clothes Exchange, we've been running for 10 years. As far as we're aware, we're the longest running sort of event of its kind. So the idea is people bring unwanted items that are in good condition. We then check those into our exchange and give them credits for the number of items that they bring, and they can then spend those credits on new to them items, which they can then get more value out of.
Right, so it doesn't matter what the item is. I mean, if you bring something which is not worth a great deal and then walk out with something worth significantly more, that's part of the deal.
It is, yeah. I think it's part of the enjoyment of it. You can come with one type of clothing and leave with something completely different. So we get we get everything from designer and vintage and handmade items right through to your sort of high street basics.
Miriam, do you like this idea?
I do, and personally I'm quite a big fan of shopping in charity shops, which I think is a kind of variation on that idea, although obviously you're purchasing the clothes but at a discounted price. I just think that the onus should be on the retailers, on the fashion companies, some of whom in this country have been known for evading paying their taxes, which would actually be not a small contribution to the economy. And I think clothes are quite expensive. I think the fashion industry is what's creating obsoleteness, if you like, in our clothing. I also think there's an issue with the quality of the clothes that you buy today, so that I can safely say that if I buy something today without naming any stores, that within a year there'll be tears, there'll be issues that will make it largely unwearable. And of course there's the other factor, which is I'm not
they don't want you to buy one
washing
machine and then use it for the next 50 years.
I don't know how to sew, I don't know how to mend my own clothes.
So they built into it so that it will stop working after 10 years, so you have to buy another.
I've asked my mum to lend me her sewing machine, and she doesn't own one anymore, which is also interesting to me, because there was not that long ago, I think our mums probably would have had a sewing machine and probably could have helped us mend our clothes, but now it's just like you get a tear in something and you just chuck it. And I think that that's part of the cycle that the fashion industry has created.
Depends on the tear.
You buy something
when you split
within
your
2
work
months,
trousers
it's out of
completely
season.
down the leg,
and that's a cycle they create, they perpetuate, so they should take accountability for that in terms of the environmental impact of it.
Venki, a thought from you before I go back to Lauren.
Well, I think this planned obsolescence isn't part of just the fashion industry. I should say I was made fun of just yesterday because I have holes in my sweaters. And, when I was young, you could simply go to a tailor and get it darned. And you simply, that doesn't even exist anymore. You now have to throw away things like a printer because one part is defective. So I think that the whole system depends on people just throwing away things and buying new things, and it's a failure of capitalism, I think.
Lauren, a word to you about this other proposal from this committee, saying that clothing producers and retailers should be charged a penny on every garment they sell to fund a recycling scheme. What are your thoughts on that specific idea?
I think it's a very interesting idea. I'm not sure that it goes far enough. In that, ideally we shouldn't be worrying about recycling. We should be worrying about reducing the amount of consumption that we're getting through. But I think it is a very important start. And I think even if that price is passed on to the consumer, 1 penny on each item it's definitely something that's not going to price people out of buying clothing.
And that's an important factor here, isn't it? Because if you put the price up to the extent that you do price people out of buying it, then it rather goes against the whole aim, it seems to me.
Absolutely, and I think we don't want to be penalising people. We want to encourage that change. It's little steps, and I think it's all about people just being a bit more aware. And there's nothing wrong with buying things new, but it's making sure that you get that value out of them, wearing them a minimum of 30 times, and not just wearing it once for your Instagram picture and then discarding it.
Miriam, was that a doubt you had about the cost proposal that I mentioned?
Yeah, especially because of the quality of the items that we're talking about. The idea that now we're going to increase the costs of everyday items, which clothing really is one of them. And I just think that clothing already being relatively expensive, that the retailers really should be footing the bill for that. But encouraging people to wear their clothes again, I think, is a fantastic initiative. And actually, Instagram might well be one of the areas that you could use to start a movement in that direction. Because as much as that social media can be a force for evil, it can also be somewhere you can start the idea of, okay, this is a new trend. Let's go against this movement for only wearing something once, and start encouraging people to think of lots of different ways of wearing the same item.
Lauren, thank you for coming in. I'm about to ask Becky whether or not you're now in a position to darn up the sweater you referred to a moment ago, particularly in the light of what Miriam said about none of us being able to sew.
Well, I think I'm going to just hang on to the sweater. But as I said, this is not restricted to the fashion industry. We're encouraging planned obsolescence in almost every aspect of our consumerism, and I don't see any solution except to consume less.
My guests today, Sir Benki Ramakrishnan and Miriam Francois. More from them in our final half hour. You're listening to Weekend from the BBC World Service.